Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Martin Andrews, and I am so glad that you are here joining us today for our webinar, A Day in the Life, a practical look at how inquiry comes to life in real classrooms. This session is the final webinar in our fall series, the next chapter of social studies, brought to you by InquireEd and the National Council for the Social Studies. Founded in 1921, NCSS is the largest professional association in the country dedicated solely to social studies education. They support and advocate for the field, and you can explore their professional learning opportunities at socialstudies.org. The webinar is also brought to you by InquireEd. InquireEd supports teachers with high-quality instructional materials that make rigorous, joyful, and transferable learning possible for every student. Our elementary social studies curriculum, Inquiry Journeys, is used across the country to help students build deep content knowledge and develop those inquiry skills that are essential for a thriving democracy. You can find more out at inquireed.com, scan the QR code. We'd love to chat about social studies and inquiry-based learning. When we were filming really these two lessons, I was there in Hannah's class for 2 days. Hannah and I also sat down for a longer conversation in the classroom where we talked about a range of topics. And what we're going to do is share that extra bonus footage on Tuesday so you can take a look at it, even beyond what we can do here in our short webinar today. Without further ado, I would love to bring on Lakeithia White, someone many of you already know. Lakeithia White is the PD and Learning Lead at InquireEd. She works with teachers across the country as they bring inquiry to life in their classrooms. And she has seen just about every version of how do I make this work? Lakeithia, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Martin. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for us to get to see some footage from Hannah's classroom.
Yeah.
But you're right, this comes up all the time. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear from teachers is that they think that rich discourse and like movement through the different tasks, they just happen or they don't. Or I'm just going to teach the lesson and the magic will happen, or the magic didn't happen and something's horribly wrong. But when we view Hannah's classroom, we're going to see that even though it looks effortless, when we're seeing this magic, but really this is happening as a result of months and months of foundational and intentional work. Hannah really thinks about and plans for how her students can be successful with the norms, with the routines, with the rehearsal time, with the language supports. And she sets really clear expectations for how this will look in her classroom and what success is. And so we want teachers to feel that same success. We want them to have that spark of magic. And so that's going to happen with the clarity, not just from strong materials and not just from their own planning, but we want it to come together. And so each task is going to include some talk or some movement, and you're going to see that. And when things can feel chaotic and time can get away from you, but we want you to see what's underneath the surface in Hannah's classroom. And she's here to be able to talk us through the decisions that she made as well.
Yeah, it really is that discourse and the variety of tasks that are going on in an inquiry-based classroom. And that's where it takes a lot of moves and it takes a lot of planning. So we're going to watch a clip here before Hannah comes in, and then we'll bring her in. I wonder how discourse actually supports the tasks that we're going to see. And I wonder, before we watch this clip, if you can give us a lens to watch it through.
Sure. So one thing we're going to see in Hannah's classroom is that the talk students do is not apart from the task. It grows out of the tasks. And so we see that as multimodal, that the students need chances to see information. They need chances to hear it, to speak it, to move with it, sort it, question it, apply it. So each task shapes how deeply they're able to engage, and each task invites a different kind of talk. It's not all the same, but the discourse is the glue. It helps the students make meaning across tasks. And so when the students have time to rehearse their thinking, when they have time to talk with their peers, go back to some ideas, grapple with them, they're not just completing activities, they're really building a solid understanding. And so in order to make this happen, as I said before, you got to have that strong foundation. The routines are strong, and then the students can shift between the tasks and the discussions without losing that momentum or that purpose. And so that's when discourse really becomes the engine for the deeper, meaningful thinking that we want to see in our classrooms.
Yeah. So we're going to take a look just at a really short clip right now of maybe the setup, I think, for a mingle pair share.
I want us to think about this question. What does the new world, in quotes, right, the so-called new world, represent for these three groups? Indigenous Americans, Africans, and Europeans. Let's start just by thinking about Indigenous Americans. What did the so-called new world, or this idea of a new world, what did it represent for them? What did it mean for them? How did that impact Indigenous Americans? I want you to think for yourself. I want you to find somebody who is not at your table and discuss what did that represent for Indigenous Americans. Anybody can be your partner, they just can't sit at your table. All right, turn to your partner. All right, what would you say the so-called new world represented for Indigenous Americans? Discuss.
It represented a point of, well, death.
What would you say for the Indigenous Americans? What happened there? Kind of when Columbus came. Okay, so a loss of land, we could say. Okay.
I really love how they just jumped right in there, didn't they, Lakithia? Okay, without further ado, Hannah, I think you're probably backstage in the waiting room right now. So if you can come on in and join us, we would love to talk about that clip and others. Hey, there you are.
Yes, here I am. It's so fun, like, just to get to see it, to get to see the classroom from the outside view. Like, when you're in it, there's so many things going through your mind. So just to even have a chance to step back and hear how many times I repeat myself, but also get to see it like that is really fun. So thank you for having me.
I want to ask before we really dig into that clip and what's going on, I wonder if you could ground us in where these students are in the year, in the inquiry, in the lessons that we're going to see, Hannah.
Sure. Yeah. So this was from just a month or a couple of weeks ago. So around mid-November, we had completed our first inquiry about Native America. And then this is in the second module of our inquiry titled Colonial Era. So the students are investigating the question, what does the colonization of the New World represent for the three groups that are mentioned in the video: Indigenous Americans, Europeans, and Africans? This is the beginning of kind of gathering information, studying sources, watching videos, looking at primary and secondary sources, and trying to get a sense of what the New World meant for those groups. It's like towards the end of that investigation.
Hannah, so one of the things that I noticed in the video is that students actually took a quiet moment to think on their own before they moved into that first round of the Mingle Pair Share. So can you walk us through what was happening there, what routines or expectations really help your students to leverage and use the think time that you're inviting them into, and then transition into their purposeful partner talk? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. So I think for me, I always want to give plenty of think time because I know that otherwise students are just going to defer to those who are really quick. And I have plenty of students who need more time to process. I repeat myself multiple times to ensure that through that think time, they are clear on what the question is. And then also, my students know that if I'm giving them time to think through something, I'm going to ask them to share with someone. There's an accountability piece to that if we're taking a time, everybody's going to be responsible for thinking here. And also, you're going to have a chance to talk about that with someone later. So I just think it provides a chance for everyone to, of course, process, but also prepare, because they do know that what's coming next, it's not a surprise to them that this is what's happened next, because this happens all the time. So they are ready and have rehearsed for themselves. I also have a number of multilingual students in my classroom who need the questions to be repeated, and they need plenty of think time to make sense of two languages or to pull from their background knowledge in order to be successful here.
This is something small that I want to surface because there are so many, like Martin said, so many teacher moves that you make. And then we talked about the foundational stuff. One of the like nitty gritty things that I observed in the video was that the students weren't talking over each other. So there was partner talk, but they knew, okay, Martin's going to go first and I'm going to go second. Like, how do they do that? Like, how do they know not to just start like on top of each other?
Yeah, so sometimes I'm really intentional about it and I'll give a directive. The students whose birthday is coming up sooner, it's your turn to share first. Or whoever's wearing the most red, I'll be very intentional. Sometimes I don't do that and I just let the conversation happen. Whoever's ready goes first. And sometimes that's nice because what the person who's ready says gives the other person an idea or a connection. So maybe they didn't have an idea during the think time, but now that they've heard somebody else say something, oh, they can add to that. I don't always say who has to go first. And also if you're going to have the same partner for like multiple talk times, I'll say, okay, now the other person who didn't share first last time is going to share first this time. Or if I sense the same person has been talking a lot, I'll give a directive about that. I also have, I don't think that we'll see this today, but at their tables, I have students have a number. And so often I'll say person number 1, share first, or 3, you understand. But so it is sometimes very deliberate and other times just let's see what happens.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that because it also sounds like there's a bit of a scaffold. Like we learn how to do it with this prompting from the teachers, but eventually we naturally are able to wait or start based on the experience of the conversation, which is what we want them to be able to do when they're adults as well,
Yeah.
right? Monitor their own airtime and take turns.
I also tell them we practice this like at the beginning of the year that your conversation is like a balloon and you want to keep it in the air the whole time. Like you're passing it back and forth like a floating balloon. And that kind of sticks with them. And I can even say to them like, oh, your balloon's on the ground. Come on. Yeah.
Oh, that would have been so great for my first graders. Like actual balloon passing around. Love that idea.
What I loved about being in the classroom is how quickly or adeptly that students were shifting from thinking, moving, talking without losing focus. And it shows how that the discourse and the task, you mentioned that, Lakeithia, really like work together. And the discourse makes the task possible. But Lakeithia, you wanted to, before this clip, maybe ask Hannah about another challenge with discourse that you often get asked about.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit of it about opting out and how you keep the talk going, but something that often comes up is thinking about intentional grouping. Like, how do you know if the group dynamics are going to be right? How do we make sure that everyone has a role and an entry point? How do we make sure that the conversations kids can build upon or like their reasoning gets deeper? So I'd also like to hear from people in the audience, folks who are watching the webinar. How do you typically grade students for their collaborative task? What goes into your thinking and your planning? And then what are some challenges that have come up for you as you're trying to group your students in your classroom? And then after we watch this clip that Martin is going to set up, we'll hear from Hannah about how she thinks about grouping for these types of tasks.
So now I'm going to share this video of day 2. This is the second day, beginning of the lesson, all the way to the first part of this group activity, a card sort.
Studies, we're going to continue thinking about the colonial era and really considering some of the reasons why people migrated to the Americas in the past. But before we go in the past, I want you to think about what might cause or convince someone to leave their homeland and journey to a new place. Think to yourself, turn to your elbow partner, and the person with the lower number should share an idea first. So check your number, and then switch. Okay. And then here, just from these 3 people, okay? I heard the conversation erupted, so I was really happy to hear everybody participating. So you can either share what you said or your partner said. Umar, what did you talk about?
We talked about that.
We are going to talk about these 3 words today when we talk about reasons people might move. Migration, raise your hand if you've heard that word before. Okay. What's an example of an animal that migrates? So just like animals might move from one place to another, we can call people moving from one place to another migration. Can you say migration? Migration. Okay. Let's do this as our hand motion, okay? Show me migration. Why would I do this? So a push factor is a reason that causes people to leave a place where they have been. So let's try push factor. Can you say push factor? Push factor. Push factor. Thinking back to the things people just mentioned, which one of those would be a push factor, a reason you would leave the place that you're in? The other reason would be a pull factor. Say pull factor. Pull factor. So something that the new place has that you want. That's called a pull factor. So think to what people said. Which one was an example of a pull factor? Okay. So come and sit down here now. We're going to watch a video now. So what are some of the reasons that led people to migrate to the so-called New World? You already have ideas? Yeah? Well, we talked about a few, so you might hear some of them. We're going to watch a video now, and I want you to keep that question in your mind. Who wants to share what were some of the push or pull factors that you heard in the video? Addie.
A push factor was like they couldn't like practice their religion freely.
Okay, I love how you said that. One push factor was that they couldn't practice their religion freely. Okay, so today you're going to get a bag of cards, and each of these is either a push or a pull factor. You and your group are going to go through and sort them. You're going to read it together, and then you're going to decide. Does this represent a push, a reason that they need to leave their home to go to a new place, or a pull factor, something that the new world could give them or that they could gain by going there? So just make, like on a desk, you're just going to make two columns, one with push and one with pull factors. All right, I'm going to read you a group. You can go, whoever's name I pull first, go to their desk, okay? Let's do groups of 3. Okay. And whoever's name I pull first, you're going to come get your bag, okay? Can someone explain, what are you doing with the cards? How are you sorting them? One thing is I want you to work together. So I don't want to see like, oh, you take this half of the bag and go like that. I want you to read, have one person read the card, and then discuss and decide. Okay. Elise, Nicholas, and Ira.
Okay, that's cool.
Go and get something, right? Okay. That's
There are shoes and explorers fighting gold. If they join
can start a new life and trade in the new world, they will become
indentured servants.
as society will be free.
What do you think?
That's a cool.
Why is that a pull factor?
Because like
Okay, so a lot to unpack there.
Like when I watch it, I'm like, whoa, I'm doing like all the things in my toolbox, like all at once here. And it's exciting to, I thought to myself, like, I'm not leaving a lot of questions to the students as to how to complete the task. Like they know how to take the cards out, and that's on purpose because I don't want them to have to decide whose desk to go to and wait and waste 3 minutes or decide who's going to come get the bag for their group. That's a waste of time. The better use of their time would be looking at the cards and discussing them. So every part of the time that whatever the kids are going to do, like I'm trying to get ahead of it so that we can spend our time actually doing the learning.
There's so many juicy tidbits from that small clip that I could surface, but for the purposes of trying to stay on topic right now, can you talk about how you did the grouping for this particular task? Because I saw it was randomized with the popsicle sticks, but you also made the decision to make it a group of 3. Can you talk about why that is? And then another question I have, because it did come up in the chat, you have a number of multilingual learners in your classroom as well. How do you support them with a task like this that's also reading heavy and they have to engage in that discourse at the same time. So it's a couple questions I'm throwing at you, but I know you got it. I know you got it, Hannah.
Yeah. So you actually can hear me say, let's do 3. The number of students in a group is one of the big decisions you have to make before deciding on grouping. In this case, I picked 3. 2 or 3 would have worked fine. I decided on 3 because I think anytime there's like discussion or kind of debate or like making a choice in something, I think 3 is a sweet spot for 5th graders. You're not going to have 2 people on either side or one person taking over. In a group of 3, it feels like a good place for everyone's going to get involved. You're not going to leave a voice behind in a larger group. But if, let's say, 2 people have one opinion, like there's going to be a chance for discussion. So that's why I decided on 3. I also went with random groups here. I like the popsicle sticks because yes, like it's visually random to the students, and I was mostly random, but as a teacher, if I know I don't want those 2 students together and like I see the stick like about to come out, I can like really quickly put it back. So I don't know, I call that like my
Little
teacher
sleight of
magic.
hand going
Right,
on
a
there.
little teacher magic there. So I think that is, it feels like visibly random to the students, which I think does send a message to them that like you trust them all to be equal members of this group. They're not set into this is a student who I'm putting in that group because they're going to take the lead, and this is going to be the quiet student who follows their lead. Everyone's in that group is an equal. Like I haven't decided who's doing what or thought ahead about it. It's so that's a message I'm trying to send to my students through the randomness in this case. And then the second part of your question is like, what about those students who might struggle to get to this task or read the cards on their own? Or in this class in particular, it would be like very unlikely to have 3 students who would not be able to read the cards. In that case, I would probably have to make a change in order for them to access the reading of it. Last year, I had 2 students who were newcomers, and they were just learning to read in their home language and in English. So that was something like I would be purposeful about making sure the groups were varied in that way. If I knew that I had that need in my class, every year, every group of students, like even sometimes you have 2 kids who just cannot be together because they don't get along, like a behavior need. So you just do your little teacher tricks, or I would plan ahead and make sure that the groups were not designed poorly.
Seeing the class and being in it, I was blown away about the participation of your multilingual learners. They wanted to talk. They wanted to be involved.
I think 3 students, like knowing that you're talking in your group of 3 feels really safe for most of my students. So the card sort, it's not like a one discussion and it's done. So maybe they're quieter when the first few cards are going, and then they slowly start to understand, they're listening, they're hearing their partners, they talk about push and pull factors, and they eventually are able to jump in. But there is just this kind of like eagerness to learn, a desire to be part of this activity that I could sense. I think it feels like, I don't know, it's cards, it's a game, or to me, they wanted to be part of it. So there was just this desire to be curious and to learn that I hope is something I'm developing with my students. That's definitely something we talk about. So it comes through in how they participate in these tasks.
Hannah, would you be willing to talk about your role in the discourse? So you set up the task for them. You gave very clear and concise direction so that time wasn't wasted. But then I saw you moving around the room, not necessarily jumping in, but letting the kids wrestle with their complex reasoning before stepping in. So how do you decide when to prompt? How do you decide when to step back? How do you decide when to let students work through the complexity on their own?
At first, when I move around, I'm usually just listening, like the first few, I don't know, minute or so. I'm just making sure everyone understands the task. So I'm probably just listening, making sure they're getting right to work. After that, I'm mostly just like coming to the groups through a lens of curiosity. Like I'm wondering what you guys are thinking about. I'd like to hear more about why you just made that decision. As just like I almost see myself as another member of the group. Can you defend your choice in putting that there? Or I think you heard me say like, why do you think that? And then also I was supporting that student reading. That was like that was a difficult card, and that student does struggle a bit with reading. So I'm just providing like more of a guide, a support, and mostly just I'm curious what they're thinking about, not and I ask questions all the time, even when they're right, which is something that like kids know sometimes that if you're asking them a question, it's because they're wrong or that you're trying to help them figure out that they're wrong. So I always ask questions. Like I'm just tell me why you think that is comes
Mhm.
no matter what.
I love that because in a lot of classrooms, when you would ask, why do you think that? It's like immediate shutdown.
I love that you're framing it as a positive. One of the things that I noticed in being there 2 days and I guess 70 minutes or 80 minutes of instruction, and I probably can't name all the things, but filled out an anchor chart, did a read aloud of encounter, did a mingle pair share, did lots of independent solo work, watched a video that you stopped and discussed, did a card sort, did a three-corner sort that we're going to see, and I know I'm missing 10 things, right? So tell me how you keep the flow going of that lesson and why you need to keep the flow going.
Yeah, I think pacing is definitely like something that I've gotten better at every year, every with every group of students as the year grows. As you get to know your students, you can get a sense for how quickly they move through things. I always feel like at the beginning of the year, I'm like, whoa, everyone's moving really quick. I feel or, oh, I don't know why this is taking this group so long. That happens at the beginning of the year. And then as the year continues and you figure out this nice flow for your students, I'm able to better pace my lessons. There are suggested timings in the Inquiry Journeys lesson, and I keep those in the back of my mind, but I'm always trying to keep this how much time we have, and here's really where I want to spend the most of our time and making sure that nothing feels too rushed, but it needs to be productive the whole time. I feel like I also am able to kind of sense like by the noise level that I don't know if this is how other teachers think, but like when I hear there's a certain noise level that tells me the kids are being productive. I can tell by like this kind of I don't know, hum or sound that they're making. And then sometimes it gets too loud and I'm like, oh, I think they've moved off topic. And that gives me like I'm sure, or sometimes it gets really quiet and I'm like, oh, they're not talking about that anymore. So that's one way that I can tell when it's time to keep moving. Yeah, like and just I'm always moving around the room and observing how things are going. So pacing can be and is definitely difficult when you're with a new curriculum or this is my second year in this grade level. So I'm still learning how much or how quickly we can move.
Yeah. Lakeithia, I want to ask you two things. One is I know Hannah's using inquiry journeys, and I know our amazing curriculum writers spend a lot of time thinking about those timings of things. And sometimes thinking about a lesson as like a series of layers, and the first layer not being all that thick, or it might be the first time you're talking about something, but it's not about mastery. Can you talk about the way that an inquiry experience builds in layers like that?
Yeah, I think that it's like gradual. So I think when teachers are planning for time and planning to teach an inquiry, it's important to look at the arc of it, the entire experience. And then once you know where they're going and what's important for them to know when, then you can make intentional decisions in the moment about where to let the conversation extend a little longer or where to say, okay, we can wrap this up because this is really not going to get us to the learning objective that we need for this particular lesson or for this module or for this inquiry. So you have to have internalized a little bit of the purpose of the lesson, the purpose of the experiences in the lesson, because they do serve a purpose. And that can help you make some really in the moment or planful decisions.
Yeah, I think that is like the idea of keeping your objective or what is the purpose of this part of the lesson in mind is so critical to pacing. And also, not everyone needs to share in the whole group. That's also something like giving them an opportunity to share, but like we don't have time for 20 people to answer the question aloud. So it's just constantly making that decision about how are we going to get the most out of our time here with our goal in mind.
A question for Lakeithia. So one of the things you talk to teachers about a lot, Lakeithia, is differentiation. And when we talk about inquiry as Hannah is doing it. We often say that an inquiry classroom like Hannah's has low walls and high ceilings by design. Can you talk a little bit about that low walls and high ceiling design of inquiry?
I mean, that every student can enter the learning, they can get over the wall. So to make that happen, it's the routines, it's the visuals, it's the sentence stems, it's that think time, it's the partner talk, all of those supports make sure that kids can enter, right? They don't have to know all the things to get started. They just need a way to get in there. And then the high ceilings are that once they're in, there's room to stretch, there's room to grow. And the expectations are high, right? Just because we need an entry point doesn't mean that our expectations for our scholars are low. So tasks like the card sort or the three-corner sort, they really let students compare, revise their thinking. It's the same structure, but students engage with it at different levels. And so that's what I saw in Hannah's classroom, that the lesson was designed intentionally, but the routines that she's built allow every student to participate. The lesson can only do so much, right? The
Right.
teacher has to be intentionally flexible so that the learners can move as far as they're ready to go. And Hannah does that very beautifully.
One thing to know about social studies where I work is that all students, like all my students who are in my homeroom, who may have pull-out services for reading or math, are in the classroom for social studies. This is the only academic subject that every student, regardless of special education status, like they are in the classroom with me. We use inquiry journeys, which, like Lakeithia mentioned, it does create so many entry points, and there's just opportunity for like brilliance and background knowledge and like their world experiences to come into the classroom. For me, social studies is this chance for us to, we're all learning from each other and everybody has something they can add to the discussion. And it's just, there's opportunity in every lesson for everybody to be a part of it. And I think I appreciate having all of my students in the classroom for that time.
We're going to move on to our final clip, and we've got about 15 minutes left. We're going to see a second part for the card sort. There's another type of sort that happens. And then students are going to move on to some independent work, and then we're going to see some sort of like reflective work that connects the 2 days.
Now we're going to sort these cards another way. We're going to think about 3 different reasons that people move. We have an economic reason. So an economic reason has to do with getting wealthy or a new job or making more money. The economy is how money moves between people. So an economic reason is something related to money. If you think that the scenario is an economic reason, you're going to walk to that back wall. Do you see where that picture says economic reason? Another reason could be a cultural reason, like religion, or it says on here politics, like you don't agree that there should be a king and you think we should be able to vote for our leaders. That would be a cultural reason, and that is over there. Okay? And then another reason people might move is a geographic reason, like land or natural resources, and that's over here. Okay, now just like with the last sort, maybe some of them don't fit so perfectly within push or pull or geographic or economic. So you can stand between 2 reasons if you don't think that that situation perfectly fits into one, okay? But be ready to defend your opinion. Okay, so I'm going to read the scenario and say the number. Does everyone see how the cards have a number on it? Yeah? Okay, then you and your partner are going to decide, is it economic, point to economic, money, geographic, land, or cultural, religion? Okay, here's the first one. Let's do number 1. Now there is news of explorers finding gold in the New World. We'll discuss first.
It says, well. But also, because yeah, it's kind of like geographic, because you can only find gold like on the sea, right? But I think it's kind of like, I'm in the middle.
Who would like to defend their spot? Why did you go where you went? Nicholas.
I went in the middle
Of what?
of geographic reasons and economic reasons, because gold is like money-ish.
Okay.
But also geographic, you can only find gold like underground.
Folder, you have this paper. You're going to complete this on your own. So you're going to read the scenario, and you're going to decide whether it represents a push or a pull factor to move to a new place. And then you're going to decide whether it's economic, cultural, or geographic. And it, for push or pull, you have to check one. You like a check mark, yep. And push or pull, you're gonna only pick one, but for the factors or systems, if you think it fits into more than one, like we discussed earlier, you could pick more than one, okay? And then at the bottom, you're gonna explain your reasoning for why you picked what goes where, okay? I'll read this one. It says, wool traders in England may not have been very successful. Many are living in poverty now. Okay? The second one says, some people in England are seeking adventure in a new place. All right, go ahead and pick and fill this in.
Wool traders is like someone who sells food.
Is there anything we can add to what the New World represents for the Europeans from what we heard about in the push or pull factors? Are there any push or pull factors or reasons for moving to a new place? Okay, yeah, Esme?
To add to like spread religion.
Uh-huh.
Just like practicing religion freedom.
Okay, yep.
When they sit down to write at the end, I just think about how knowledge won't be a barrier to them writing because of everything that they've experienced. But
There are so many moments, Mark, where I have to stop myself from running around and ringing real fast because there's so many moves. Did you see that quick check for understanding when she was like point, point, point,
yes,
10 seconds? And they know where to go. So good, so good, so good. But one thing I want to surface, Hannah, is the physical movement. Talk about, I know a lot of teachers, that can make them feel a little uncomfortable or have a little fear or anxiety around it. So how do you ensure that your students can handle this movement? What would you tell a teacher who's like, I just won't do that. I won't be doing that in my classroom. What would you say to them?
I would say practice it before you want it to be something academic. Practice it at the beginning of the school year. Engagement's going to increase if they have a chance to move. That just does happen. So I have this activity that we do at the beginning of the year. It's called This or That. It's like a getting to know you activity. And it's basically the exact same idea as this 3-corner sort where they just move to one part of the room. And I'm like very explicit about how to move through that activity. You walk to the spot, then when you get there, you wait for the cue, then you talk. And we practice that like a couple days in a row at the beginning of the school year. So then once it becomes something where we're adding in this complexity with the academic demand, the language, all that, they don't need to be thinking so much about how do I participate? They're just thinking about, oh, what's the content here? So that would be my biggest like piece of advice is to, practice the ways you want your kids to learn academically in less demanding ways at the beginning of the year so that I didn't have to explain when you walk, you're going to be quiet. When you get to your spot, you're going to wait to have the discussion. I didn't have to say that because we've done it already before.
Yes, yes, and yes again. I just want to stamp that moment right there. Another question I have is I saw you go referring to an anchor chart. Your students referenced it, you added to it. Can you talk a little bit about how the anchor chart is used in your classroom as well as what looks like the inquiry wall behind you? How do you use that to support the discourse in your classroom? And how does it help the students connect ideas?
I see the anchor charts and the inquiry wall as this living and growing representation of all of our learning and the thinking that we have together. And I think I like to keep referring to it because it is another support for students when, they're trying to think of an answer or respond or use someone else's thinking. It's there for them as something they can rely on when we're reflecting on our learning or reviewing our learning from previous days. The anchor charts are there as like a support for everybody so that it's not about memorizing, but it's more, can you find the resources you need? So it's teaching students you have access to things that you need around the classroom. And it's just a way to keep record of all that we've learned. And we can use it to reflect on where we've come from, how much we've learned over time. So there's so many benefits of collecting information that way.
Yeah. And that actually was the anchor chart you filled out the day before in the previous lesson too that you were coming back to. The one in
Yeah.
that clip. That's great. So it's up there. I just want to ask a final couple questions. First, maybe to you, Hannah, having seen now this footage, and I wonder what you would hope that teachers would carry with them from this webinar, from seeing this to their own classroom, something about talk or task flow or even mindset as they try to make a shift to inquiry, which can be challenging.
I think after watching this and even there's like seeing myself do it, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think as much about the moves I'm making or the tiny little things I'm doing. Like in the moment, those are just happening. So I would say be intentional about how you want your students to participate in the talk and really give them directions about what that talk looks like, practice it, and be explicit about who's going to talk first. What does it look like when you turn to somebody and get information from them? It's actually not as natural, right? As adults, we are pretty good at hopefully allowing others to share their ideas and listening, but that is actually like a skill that students need to learn and need support in. So providing practice in both academic ways, like in inquiry lesson like this, but also practicing it at the beginning of the year or at other times in the year in less academically demanding ways so that your students become really good at sharing the floor, keeping a conversation going, listening to others and building on ideas. Like that's actually not as natural to them as it might be for us. So we do need to be intentional about that. That'd probably be one thing after watching this I've noticed is that I'm doing a lot to make sure that goes well.
I would say for me, it's really thinking about the purpose of the inquiry as a whole and the purpose of the talk in within the context of the larger inquiry or the larger module or the lesson. So is this a moment where we need to hear from every single student or is it not? Is this a moment where if the students aren't getting it in this moment, I need to continue to beat it, or is this going to be unfolded 3 lessons later, right? So knowing where kids are going, where they're headed will help you make good decisions about the talk in a specific lesson. That's what I would.
One of the things that I noticed in my reflection would be that students were very engaged, right? But engagement isn't the goal. Engagement is the means to an end, and that end is building knowledge, building skills, deeper understanding. And so the engagement felt purposeful and it moved students toward that goal. It's essential. Engagement and attention are essential. That's not the goal. It's the way to get there. And it was just really powerful to see in person. And Hannah, I also want to say that it can be vulnerable to have the camera in your room, but it's just so helpful for everyone to be able to see a classroom alive. And I just want to thank you so much for letting us come in.
Yes, thanks for it's really nice to actually have a chance to reflect in this way and see I'm just proud of the classroom that we have and my students and the way they participated. So I'm really grateful to have kind of a record of it now too.
Everyone, I will reach out on Tuesday and I'm going to spend some time editing this great interview that I have with Hannah that we did and maybe intersperse it with some other classroom footage. So you're going to want to look for that bonus on Tuesday. But Lakeithia, thanks so much for joining us. It's always great to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And Hannah, once again, just thank you for your generosity and for allowing us a peek into a day in the life of inquiry.
Thank you. Thank you for filming and capturing it.
Okay, everyone, we've got another series coming up in the spring, so stay tuned for that. But thanks for joining us today. Take care, everybody.